the modules that we're doing, Victorian Gothic in the first year, postmodernism and modernism in the second year, along with the other sort of core courses. It really gives you a rounded view of how to approach an argument and how to approach text. So that's what I found most helpful, really.
The first year begins with an investigation of Victorian Gothic fiction. So we start off by looking at a novel by Wilkie Collins from 1868 called The Moonstone. And The Moonstone is really a kind of, it's a page-turner. It's really quite a thrilling novel. It's built around a mystery of a stolen diamond. And it's generally considered to be the kind of prototype for the country house detective mystery. But it's got profound elements of Gothic within it, so a sense of menace or of gloom, a kind of a desolate location and ideas of isolation. And we then move on to think about the kind of Gothic revival of the 1880s and the 1890s. So that's a time when many of the kind of horror icons of today, like Dracula and Jekyll and Hyde, were born. So we think in that course about what it is that Gothic fiction and monsters are doing for the late Victorians.
With my group in fiction, it's just 9 of us. And we know each other now for the last 2.5 years, so it just flows. Yeah, we bounce off each other. So it's far, far better small groups, and I like the way they do that here.
We introduce students to some of the major movements within literature of the kind of 19th century to the present day. So students look at realist fiction, which of course is dominant throughout most of the 19th century. They then look at the Modernist movement of the 20th century and think about why it is that writers in the 1920s, 1930s start experimenting with the form of the novel, with its conventions and its techniques. And they then go on to think about this rather strange thing that's called postmodern fiction.
The tutor sits back, somebody does a presentation, and we'll discuss that presentation. The tutor just sort of like steers us, but we've actually given us a lecture. So I like that.
Students think about colonialism in relationship to imaginative fiction. So they think about the ways that, for example, 19th century British fictions, even some of those which don't seem to be about empire, are actually fundamentally concerned with Britain's imperial project and, for example, with slavery. But then they also think about the way that in the 20th century, many post-colonial writers start using Gothic tropes actually to write back to empire and to talk about what it means to be living in a colonial or indeed a post-colonial society.
Doing a straight literature course would have been quite claustrophobic. I wouldn't have been able to branch out into anything else I wanted to. If I was doing a straight English literature course, I wouldn't have perhaps been able to read all the American Afro-Caribbean literatures that we're reading at the moment.
In the final semester of the whole option pathway, students look at the civil rights movement in the United States and think about the ways that black writers of that movement are utilising not just novels but also forms such as memoirs and diaries in order to articulate forms of political agency. There's no known human society in history or anywhere in the world today that isn't constantly telling itself stories. So one of the questions that we're exploring on this option pathway is, why is that the case? Why are stories so important to human beings and human societies? What do stories do for us?